Okay, good morning, guys. We'll give everyone another minute, but for those of you who are here, if you want to put, yeah, Christina's got it. Put your name in the chat. It's like we've done this before or something. Good morning, Christina. Good morning, Amy. Good morning, Kristen. Good morning. I see Kylie and Irma here too. Good morning, Michaela. Okay. Okay. Good morning, guys. How's everyone doing on this foggy Wednesday morning, or at least it was foggy when I was driving to campus this morning. I see Haley's just jumped on. Good morning, Haley. Okay, so I'll start by doing a little overview of what we have left to talk about, and then we'll dive into today's material. As always, if you have a question, either unmute yourself and ask or put it in the chat. So we're gonna jump right in here. Okay, so this is our Canvas page. We're up to week 12. We're going to be talking about resumes and CVs today, as well as your asynchronous assignment is to make a draft of a science poster. Next week's material is about communicating with non-scientists and why it's important, and strategies for both writing for a non-science audience and then speaking about science to a non-science audience. That will be our 13 class material. And then we're going to have a final writing workshop week 14, where you will go over the last of your writing portfolio materials. Same thing we did with the lab reports. You have those partnerships that you've already worked out, and so you'll email them your work ahead of time, and you'll fill out rubrics, and then I'll put you guys into breakout rooms to meet and discuss and give each other kind of final feedback for the class. And then we have that half week. It's like November 11th, I think, is the day our class is supposed to meet, and we're not gonna meet on that last Wednesday. And instead, I want you to take that class time and do something that is some self-care. And I'll post a little bit about that. I might ask you to just write up a quick journal discussion post about what you did for your self-care week. So that will be week 5, and then at the end, we have our final things due. So you'll have your final lab reports you'll turn in, your final personal statement that has been polished that you'll work on in the writing workshop, your final resume or CV. You can do either or, whichever is the most useful for you is what you should work on. And then during that final week, or during finals week, I think we have meeting on the 16th of November is our finals week block. That will have a Zoom virtual poster session, so you'll present your science poster. So that is kind of where we are and where we're headed. So we're here in our class 12 agenda right now. For the class 12 attendance quiz, I want you guys to see if you could tell me, before we even talk about today's material, what the difference is between a CV and a resume. While you do that, I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint. So tell me, for your class 12 attendance quiz, what is the difference between a CV and a resume? What is the difference between a CV and a resume? Can you tease that out? What is the difference between a CV and a resume? Okay. What is the difference between a CV and a resume? While you do that, I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint. Caleb's here too. Okay. What is the difference between a CV and a resume? Okay, so I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint here. Again, I have the chat open in case you guys need it. If you are joining late, please make sure you have your name in the chat. Play from the start here. So today we're going to be talking about CVs and resumes. If you have applied for any jobs, that are more professional positions, if you've applied for any graduate programs or like specific internship programs, they've probably asked you for a CV or a resume. And today we're going to spend some time talking about that. Now, the class is supposed to be about reading and writing for the sciences, but I also want to spend some time about writing these documents that are really important that you'll need beyond UNC Pembroke. So our learning objectives are to create a CV and a resume tailored for a specific purpose. This is kind of the key, to compare and contrast CVs and resumes and to critique CVs and resumes. So this is going to be more of a straight lecture. I apologize if that is a little bit boring, but I think that the topic is so important that hopefully it's something that is interesting for everyone. Okay, so what is the difference? A CV, a curriculum vitae, is Latin for course of life. And this is the full history of your career and used mainly in academic settings. So when I applied for this job as an assistant professor in the biology department, I had to provide a CV. When I apply for a grant from the NIH to conduct my research, I also need to do a CV. When I was applying for graduate school, it was a CV. So for academics, this is normally the document that we're going to choose. A resume is French for summary. I don't speak French, but apparently that is French for summary. And this is focused more on skills and work experience. And it's typically used for all non-academic positions. So if you're applying for a job or you're applying for a specific certificate program, perhaps, you're going to have a resume. And it is going to focus, rather than on everything, just the highlights. Just the highlights. This distinction can sometimes be fuzzy, as the two terms are often used interchangeably, and it varies by country. And so if you're not sure, just ask. Always ask your employer what they would like. The overlap, what's going to be the same for both of them, is they both want to start with your name and kind of like a big, pretty font with your contact information, your address, your phone number, your email address. If you have a LinkedIn and it's something you're proud of, put that as well. If you have a LinkedIn and you haven't touched it since you started at UNCP and you created the LinkedIn, don't put that. Only put it if it's good. And they have the same purpose, which is to demonstrate your qualifications for a job or a position, and hopefully to make you stand out from the crowd. You're selling yourself with this document. So because you're selling yourself, there can be no typos, no grammatical errors. You want someone to read it over several times. You want your most nitpicky friend, your mom, your brother, your roommate, everyone in your life should look at this document to see if they could find one tiny error, okay? Because as someone who's looked at students' CVs or resumes before, you're making a snap judgment about someone. You're making a snap judgment about someone, and you want to show that you have that kind of attention to detail that a lot of employers and a lot of academic positions are looking for. And the way that you show attention to detail is by making sure there are no errors in your CV or resume. You want to check that it's indented and aligned perfectly, so you don't want some things to be kind of indented and others not, and other things more indented. It needs to be beautiful. This needs to be one of the most professional things you've ever created. It's got to be cleanly and consistently formatted. There can be variations, so there's no standard format for a CV or a resume, but it should be the same format within a document. So for example, if you have the dates and you write out January, 2020, you don't want to in another place put JAN period 2020. Okay, you want it to be consistent. And yes, it might seem like a small thing, but for a resume or a CV, that's a big thing. You want it to be perfect. It's got to be easy to read and easy to find information. You don't want it to be any smaller than 12-point font. Even if you have a lot of things you want to squeeze onto that one-page document. And you want to use one of the boring fonts, something like Times New Roman, for example. You want to have standard margins, so don't get squishy with the margins. Also, don't make them huge. And you want to use section headings that are either bolded or underlined or in all capital letters to help break out the different sections in the document. You want to use a header or a footer with your last name and the page number. This is really important for a CV because a CV, again, is going to eventually be multiple pages. And so if someone sends it to a group printer and it prints off, you want to make sure that your last name in particular is on every page. For a resume, you're going to use this for nearly all jobs outside of academia in the United States. And it's typically no longer than 1 to 2 pages. Usually, I say 1 page. For undergrads especially, it's 1 page. If you've had a lot of experience and you're seasoned in your career, your resume might get onto a 2nd page. And the thing about a resume is that it is tailored for the job you're applying for. You do not include all of your past experiences, all your past jobs. You only include what's most relevant. So for example, if you're applying for a position at a zoo, you want to put your job as a dog walker. That's relevant to the zoo. You want to put the internships you had at another zoo. You want to put your relevant coursework, your zoology, your animal behavior coursework. You don't want to necessarily put the job that you had bagging groceries. Now, there's nothing wrong with the job bagging groceries, but it doesn't fit with the experience you're trying to highlight, which is around a zoo. Now, if you don't have any experience besides bagging groceries, then obviously you put that. But you want to try to, if possible, tailor it for the position and what they're looking for. You often with a resume will have an objective statement, which after your name and your contact info, which begins with why you want that job or what you're looking for. And then the sections for a resume you want to have, again, that contact info, then the objective. Then you start with education, related coursework, skills, experiences. If you're a student, if you're currently a student, you can put activities, community service, and awards. Don't put a section header if you have nothing to fill that section. So don't put the section community service if you don't have any community service and then it's just blank and you skip right down to awards, because all it does is draw attention to the fact that you didn't do any community service. The place that I'll often see that is awards. So someone with the header awards and there will be no awards. It's okay if you've never gotten an award, just don't put the heading on. Don't draw attention to that. You want to start with the objective. It's 1 sentence that states who you are career-wise and your employment goal. So something like current UNCP senior, seeking a full-time position, working with students at a zoo or children at a zoo, right? If we're talking about this imaginary zoo job. Then you want to put your education and list your degrees and institutions. If you haven't graduated yet, you can put anticipated graduation date. And then you want to put any honors that you got. So Latin honors, any other distinctions. And if your GPA is good, put your GPA. If your GPA for your major is good and your overall GPA is not great, just put your GPA for your major, put like major GPA and then the number. If both of those numbers are not great, don't put either. Only put them if they're good. Then you want to do related coursework, classes that you've completed, so not classes that you're currently enrolled in, or classes that you signed up for next semester. So just the classes that you finished that are useful for that job. And if you've done a lab for that class, if you're applying for a science position, you might want to put the word lab in parentheses. Again, don't list every single class, just the big hitters. And then as you gain work experience, eventually you'll take out this related coursework heading. You want to put skills, list the skills that you have or the techniques you're familiar with that are relevant for that job. Again, this is tailored for the job. So if you read the job ad and they say they are looking for someone who has skills with DNA and RNA techniques and can make solutions, then you want to put those skills in your skills section only if you've done them, right? So if you actually do have DNA and RNA techniques down and you can make solutions, put that down, okay? You want to line up the ad with the skills section. And then experience, you're going to list your previous jobs, internships, and other work in reverse chronological order. So you want to put the most recent first for a resume. Because again, a resume is just the big hitters. Be careful not to resume pads. What I mean by that is you start to tease out a bunch of things that maybe you haven't done for very long, or you aren't very comfortable with. Don't put things on there that aren't true. Don't put that you're fluent in Spanish if you've just taken intro Spanish, for example, because that's a lie is what it is, and they might catch you in it and it might be bad. It doesn't matter for work experience if the position was paid or unpaid, but you do want to put the length of time at that position. There's a difference between a internship that was just 1 month versus a job that you've had for 5 years, right? So you want to put the length of time and the hours per week, that sort of numerical information. You can include a bullet point for the tasks or skills involved in the position, and the current job you want to put the date you started -- present to show that you're still working there. For activities, mainly this is used for students, and this is where you put your extracurriculars, your clubs, your sports, your other organizations, etc. And this can show how well-rounded you are, and can also speak to leadership or commitment. So you want to put, especially if you are serving in a leadership role in any of those organizations, you definitely want to put that. And it, again, will disappear as you gain work experience. Community service, again, activities with the amount of hours that you were involved, the amount of hours you did. And then awards, it can be athletic. I warn against people who only put athletic awards. Ideally, eventually, that you want to do work-related or community service-related awards. Now in a CV, if that's for people going to graduate school or research internship, then you're going to make a CV. So it's a full academic story. The length is variable. As an undergrad, yours will still probably only be 1 to 2 pages, but it's going to get longer and longer over time. And the comment sections here are pretty similar. You're going to start with education, research experience, teaching experience, publications, presentations, grants, awards, service, and list your references. Now, the CV sections, you can also rotate around depending on the position that you're applying for. So when I applied for this position, I put teaching experience right after education. So I did education and then teaching experience and then my research experience, because for this position at UNCP, they really care that you know how to teach more than your research. Now, I also at the same time applied for a position in a research lab. Obviously, I put research experience and publications and presentations, those things first, and I put teaching experience further down, because if I'm working just in a lab, they don't care about my teaching skills. So you want to tailor it for what you're applying for. You may have others depending on the discipline, and the only thing you have to have is education. The other sections are variable and depend on the field. For education, you want to list all your degrees and institutions, include that in honors, and then if you've done a thesis or dissertation, you want to include the title and your advisor. For research experience, this you're going to put in chronological order because it's telling your science story. So you want to describe the project, you want to list important tasks or skills you gain, kind of in a paragraph. I usually do bulleted sentences. And you want to focus not just on the hard skills you gained from a research experience. You don't want to just talk about the fact that you learned how to do mouse memory tests, but you also want to say the softer skills, so that you wrote up a manuscript, or you presented at 3 conferences, or you led a lab meeting, or you trained a younger student. Those things should also go in the description. And this will change a lot. It may morph into several separate sections as you gain experience. But for students, you might just put experience and put other jobs in it, and not just put research experience. Again, teaching experience, the same sort of thing, chronological order, list the topics for each course and relevant work.
Question really quick.
Yeah.
So for the experience, since in our genetics class,
Yeah.
UNCP, since we can put that on our resume, we can put that since we actually did research in that class.
Yeah, so if you did a class where you had a big project, a big research project, that can go in research experience.
Okay. And
you just want to explain in the section what you gained out of it skills-wise, like hard skills, so you learned PCR and bioinformatics, whatever, and then the soft skills, so you learned how to design a project, how to analyze data, that sort of stuff. Okay. That's a good question, though. Any other questions? I know I was just kind of on a little talking roll. Any other questions? Okay. I'm gonna keep my talking roll going. So publications for students, this section is usually not there because usually you don't have publications. You just want to list publications that you're on in a bibliographical style in chronological order. Usually you bold your name on the author list to show that this was the first author publication, a middle author, etc. Presentations, this, if you did a presentation for a class, you can put that in your presentation section if it was a big presentation on a project. This just shows that you have oral presentation skills as well, so you want to put them there, again, in chronological order, in kind of like a bibliographical style. At first, you list everything. So at first, you're going to put every presentation you've ever given. And then eventually, you can transition to selected presentations where you just put like the highlights. And then grants and awards, again, any grants or awards that you've ever received. In, again, chronological order, because again, for a CV, you're telling your science story. So you want them to go like, in the beginning, I was interested in the genetics of this one particular fungus. And then over time, I became interested in microbes as a whole. And then I transitioned to working on a yeast system. So you wanna tell your science story. I also like to end a CV with service, and not everyone will say to do this, but I think it shows that you're well-rounded. So I like to put a community service, not just academic service, but community service as well. And you can even put a section called hobbies. Now, for the hobby section, you probably on a CV want it to just be like one line. But for my CV, I actually put a hobby section when I applied to graduate school. And one of my interviews, we talked about science at first, but then the professor who was looking at my CV saw that I had put that I was interested in yoga at the very bottom. And she actually asked me about it. I was like, oh, I see you do yoga. Like, what kind of yoga? And so it helps make you kind of like a well-rounded individual. So don't be afraid to do that, to show that you are a human who gives back to your community, who has other interests besides just classes and science and kind of boring stuff. And then you want to, at the very, very end, put references and say something like letters upon request. And these are just the names and the contact information for people who will write you a letter. Please ask them before you put them in your CV that you're going to send out, and just give them a heads up. Hey, I'm listing you as a reference. You may be contacted by the graduate school or a position, etc. Tips and tricks. If you don't already have one, start now. This can take a really long time to put together. So we're doing it for this class, but you want to start one sooner rather than later. And I like to have a running document, and for me, I add to it every semester. So at the end of a semester, after I've submitted all of my grades and I have a very large glass of wine, the next day will add and update my CV with the things that I accomplished that semester. Because honestly, you forget about like, oh yeah, I did give a talk here, or I did take that class, or I did participate in that workshop, or I did help at the food bank for that, those 2 Saturdays. So have a running document. And then what I like to do is I have a document where I list everything, and then I'll pull from it to make the tailored CV or resume. So you have the document that's kind of like the bank of all the things you've done, and you pull what you need. So say you want to write a resume for your zoo job, you have a giant list of all of the work experiences and class experiences you've had, and you just pull out of it the ones related to that job. Again, you want to trim and rearrange. You want to think about the order of the sections, which experience is going to be the most relevant, and what is fit for the application. When you read a job ad, they're going to tell you what they're looking for. They are. And it's your job to read it and highlight and understand what skills they need to have, what is required, and what skills they're recommending that the person has. And you want to use your resume or your CV to show that you fit that ad. So this is the show, don't tell part of an application. You want to solicit examples from friends or other people who have worked, especially someone who has the job you want. This is just career counseling 101. You want to find the person who has the job that you eventually want, and you want to have some sort of informational interview with them. It can be over Zoom. It can be just a series of emails back and forth. And you want to get things like their resume or CV, things that they did on their job application and their interview, what their day-to-day is like, how they've been successful, what pitfalls, those sorts of things are really great from the people who have the careers that you want. Be wary of online templates. Online templates exist and they're a good place to start, but they can look like you filled out an online template, and that's not great. So let's look at some examples for a resume. So resumes can get creative depending on the job. So if you're applying for a job in a more creative field, especially something like advertising or marketing or some sort of digital job, right? Social media, all of those things, you want your resume to kind of stand out. So if we look at the resume on the left, this is a really good example of a creative resume. And she's just applying for other administrative assistant, or she's looking to move into a role as a project manager, which is very vague. But what I like about this document is that your eye immediately goes to this colored bar on the left. And what you see again is the person's name, her current position, and then her contact hits are really well defined and distinguished. And they've got the big bold, so this is her email, her phone number, her address, and her LinkedIn, assuming she has a good LinkedIn. Then your eye goes next to the skills, right? These are the things that she's good at. And I'm assuming that these words probably line up exactly with the job ad. She's good at problem solving, adaptability, collaboration, etc. Then she lists her education, name of the degree, the college, the years, and then she's got an award, okay? So these are the big ticket items. Then you go over here, you read an objective statement, looking for a job. She's an administrative assistant with 6+ years of experience organizing presentations, preparing facility reports, etc., etc. She has a BA, and she's looking for a role as a project manager. So it says who she is, the big ticket items, how much experience she has, the experience in terms of skills, and her education, and then what she wants, a job as a project manager. And then again, she lists experience for a resume, the most current up first. So she has this job as an admin assistant, and then she has 2 previous jobs as a secretary. Really nice. This one here is similar, again, eye-catching, but it's a little bit more wordy. So what you notice about the one on the left is it's very visual. This is a little bit more wordy. You have the professional summary, but skills are not quite as obvious. Education's kind of hidden. And so you want to think, when you look especially at a resume, you want to zoom out of the document or print it off and really look at it and see what the person who looks at it, what they're going to notice and pay attention to. So we're going to take a look at some examples on Canvas to help you build your own resume, and then we'll end class a little early so that you can build your own. Okay. Well, I stopped sharing this. Any questions before I go back to Canvas? Any questions about resumes or CVs? Okay, I'm going to switch back to show you guys some examples that I've posted to Canvas. Okay, so the first one is a CV science example. And so this one is, you can see both pages, 1 page, 2 page. And again, it's boring because it's a scientist. So they've got their contact info, their PhD, they got their LinkedIn. Again, you should have a LinkedIn. You should take some time to make it look nice. And as soon as it looks nice, you should include it in your documents. They've got their education. They've got area of research interest. Then they've got their research experience. Again, they're going to put the title of their project and who they worked under in the department. For this, I would actually recommend including more information about skills and stuff like that, like to kind of flesh this out. They have publications, they've got presentations, teaching experience, a grant that they wrote, academic service, professional affiliations, honors, and then the contact information for their references. So this is a pretty good CV for a science position. And this is a functional resume, and so this is focused mainly on skills. And so what this person does, they have their name, contact information, an objective statement, and education. They do a summary of their qualifications, so the big hitters, how with numbers. So 3 years, increased responsibility, up-to-date knowledge, these sort of computer skills, and then communication language skills. And then they break it down into what they think are their big hitters. So based on that market and sales performance, they've got market and sales skills, and they get more specific in those skills: organization planning skills, communication skills, Their employment history, they keep short, and their activities, they keep short as well. So this one is focused more on skills, if that is something that you're interested in. This is a CV for undergrads. Oh, got an error. Let's see if it loads itself. Here we go. Sometimes you just gotta refresh. Okay, so this is a student who is currently an undergraduate student. So she's got the profile, the education, right? She's got her senior thesis, her research experience. And again, she breaks down, I like this better, in bulleted points, what she's been working on. So she added to a database about photography, and then she also trained research assistants. So she's got both a hard skill and a soft skill, and she does that for all of her research experience, public policy experience, community service, conference presentation, talks, awards, publications, professional memberships, etc. And then finally, let's look at a research resume. This is for science. Again, this is another student anticipated graduation date. Now, what I like about this is she breaks down the coursework. So we've got the relevant coursework with labs to show which ones had labs. This is not every class that Rob has taken, but just the big ones that relate to science, right? And then laboratory skills, again, only put things that you feel comfortable actually performing, a summary of qualifications, and then experiences, distinctions, community service. So this is a nice way to break it down. Okay, so what I want to now show you are the assignments that I want you guys to be working on for the rest of today and then your asynchronous time this week. So the first thing you're going to do is write a resume. Now, you can also write a CV. If you're planning to apply for graduate school, submit a CV instead. Totally fine. I can give you feedback on that CV as opposed to the resume. But if you are not applying to a graduate program, submit a resume for yourself. It'll be graded on grammar, visual appearance, content. Do you have these specific categories, and the order, the overall structure of it. So you're going to work on that. And then the other thing that you're going to be working on is a science poster. So again, during finals week, we will meet to have a virtual poster session. And so please watch this video about making a science poster, and your assignment is to do a draft of a science poster. Now, you can do your science poster about one of the labs we did in this class. So you can do the reaction time lab or the mask lab, or you could do it about any other set of experiments that you've done for another class. If you conduct research on the side, or you have a research experience, or you did a summer internship, all of that is fair game. So I want you to make it about any set of experiments that you've done, and you're going to have specific sections. You'll make a little PowerPoint slide, and you will submit that. Okay. Are there any questions about what you're working on this week? Any questions? Okay. You guys are good to go. Please spend, I let you out a little early, so please spend the rest of this time working on that resume or that CV. Pay attention to order, pay attention to the visual look of it. And I'll stick around for a few minutes in case you guys have any questions.